to the Elite Web3 podcast. I'm your host, Sean Chambers, and I'm here with Harley Hermison, and we have a great guest on today.
Yes, we have an extremely special guest. This guy's a legend in trade finance. It's my pleasure to introduce Andrea Frosini. Can you briefly introduce yourself and share your background and expertise in the trade finance industry?
Ciao, Harley. Ciao, Sean. First of all, nice being with you today, guys. It's a pleasure to me. So briefly about myself, my name is Andrea Frosini. I'm from Florence, Italy. The original one and only, actually. So briefly about myself, I'm a former, let's say so, trade finance professional. And a special one, actually, because I haven't spent my whole career, my past career in banking, but on the other side of the fence. Large corporates, basically. Spent 12 years at a Swedish company and 1 year and a Swiss one dealing with trade and trade finance in general. So the original side of trade finance, the very traditional one. So, I mean, out of 2018, I started getting interested into digitalization process and came across blockchain. Random, I can't even remember how this happened. Studying the basics, the foundation of the technology, not being a technologist, but you see, a very traditional guy. So, and I fell in love with it. Studied in getting into how this technology can deeply impact my world, the world of trade and trade finance. And out of September 2021, after a few, let's say, discussions, after a few meetings, virtual ones, unfortunately, I was asked to step in as business development manager for XDC Foundation. I'm still carrying out the role. So that's briefly about myself, Harley, Sean. I'm a traditional guy trying to, let's say, modernize a very traditional and resistant to change industry, such as trade finance and supply chain finance.
Can you maybe explain trade finance? Because that's a word a lot of people hear, and a lot of people don't really understand exactly what trade finance is. You maybe give a brief description
Sure.
people that are unfamiliar with the term trade
Sure.
finance?
Well, trade finance, and to a larger extent, supply chain finance, is the discipline that, let's say, regulates international trade exchanges. It is literally the backbone of international trade. So every transaction at a high level or lower level is deeply affected by trade finance. It comprises a very large range of instruments, spanning from letters of credit to open accounts, all gather together under this macro tag, such as trade finance. So, I mean, it's basically finance, but not only finance, because it deeply is deeply entwined with other disciplines such as supply chain, such as logistics. So if you look, I don't want to bore you giving you too many details, of course, but the more you get into this, you see how operational side entwines with the financial side. Take, for instance, normal letters of credit, and it covers the entire globe. So this is briefly what trade finance is about. It's literally what stands below transaction cross-border normally.
Interesting. So we know you're passionate about, trade finance and everything that's coming. So what initially sparked your interest into blockchain technology and the potential applications of it in trade finance?
Good question, Sean. It is actually the flaws I could spot into trade finance. Literally, I can tell you, trade finance was literally created close to my place 5 centuries ago, because it was created by a bank called Monte dei Paschi. Most probably, we know the basics, actually. And it never really changed at its core. You see, it's so stuck on paper. You got documents. You don't have records. So to me, this in 21st century, okay, this is a great flaw because, of course, you can cheat on paper, you can alter paper, you cannot alter digital stuff, you cannot alter records, at least not in blockchain. We all know this. So, I mean, the very first thing I told myself, being aware of what's going on in terms of fraud, in terms of troubles in the industry, I said, gee, the right technology to rectify the situation is indeed blockchain. That's how I got kickstarted me, literally, this thing, because you go down into the discipline, you notice how cumbersome it is. Consider that in a normal transaction based on a letter of credit payable at site, from the moment of the opening of the issuing of the LC to the moment you literally cash the nominal value of the LC, can pass 2, 3, 4 months. It's a hell of a time. So much time. It goes so slowly. And the world now goes very quickly. So there is a discrepancy between discipline and how the world now is used to act, used to function. And that's the sparkle that gave rise to the fire, at least in my own mind. Abandoning the old world, giving my contribution in modernizing it at least as much as I could. And I think literally that XTC network and XTC Foundation is the ideal deal to cope with this, because it's so much down into this.
I agree completely. XDC definitely has the right foundation. It's scalable, it's fast, it has everything you really need to go ahead and do these trade finance instruments. Can you maybe explain some of the inefficiencies in the current trade finance and how blockchain like XDC can solve some of these issues? I know you hit on some of them briefly earlier.
Yeah. On the operational side, it's needless to point out how paper is inefficient. Take, for instance, the rise of the pandemics out of 2020. There were cases in Northern Africa where central banks had to issue special communication to allow for PDF to step into the picture, because paper were blocked somewhere. They didn't even know where. So, I mean, that's the first flow that digitalization in general and blockchain can fix indeed. Second, we all know this, by the way, Harley, Sean, needless to point this out, there is a massive discrepancy between the need for trade finance and the real amount of what's being given to the companies. Most of the companies around the world is simply not allowed to step into the picture, and it's a massive one. The so-called trade finance gap, it is estimated in trillions. And nowadays, you have a peer-to-peer technology that can allow companies, the smallest one, the micro ones, to step into the larger picture. And further than this, it allows to unlock literally what's now being frozen at banking level because of the paradigms that simply cannot be met by small and micro companies nowadays. How can a facility for payments, international payments, can be granted to a small company? It's simply impossible. 90% and more than that is nowadays rejected, which makes that those small companies, sooner or later, most probably sooner, will die, as they cannot access to international markets, which is nowadays you see that globally, it's no brainer. You go international or you die. Absolutely. I know it's a scary picture, but that's harsh reality. We don't have to hide each other behind your finger. So that's basically 2 points. And I can tell you, the document one, the operational one, is not even the most important. Fix the gap is definitely the most urgent thing, because we're on the verge of a massive recession. And if you manage to do that, at least starting to do that, you're going to solve massive troubles, global ones.
Definitely. So, you worked with the Hyperledger Foundation. Would you be able to explain what Hyperledger is and its role in blockchain technology?
Well, to work as a is a very let's say high level word. Actually, I was volunteering. You don't work at Hyperledger. You just volunteering, which means you're not paid. That was my very first experience into the blockchain space. I was already part of the Hyperledger Trade Finance SIG at the time, since the beginning, actually, 2018, 2019, when the SIG was created. And the former SIG chair, it suddenly left the community, and I was there. I was asked to be his replacement, and I started out of January 2020, right before the pandemic started. Hyperledger is an open source project. It was created by many companies, large one actually. You have Oracle, you have IBM into this, you have R3, you have plenty of them. It's DLT. It's not really blockchain. You're missing the liquidity part of it. And still it's important. It's a private solution. And since my start collaborating with them, I saw the problems this create. You mentioned it, Harley, before. XDC has the right framework. It's not only scalable, it's not only very flexible, it's also both private, but especially public. And that's what the real deal is. You saw that many of the experiences being fostered under the flagship of Hyperledger been shut down. Since say we've seen We.Trade, we've seen TradeLens. Remember that trade is global. You cannot lock it to a private solution. You don't scale. You don't go bigger. How many consortia should have booked in to go global? Too many, most probably. So you can lock yourself into a private solution, but you have to communicate with the public infrastructure freely and efficiently, which still was not the case. I'm still in the community, by the way, trying to bring the verb on how trade works and on how to match the governance with those private solutions with the global ones going on in international trade. It's a challenge. I'm still trying to keep up with so many engagement because working for XDCs is really engagement one. So still giving my contribution in any case, because I see that even Hyperledger, many experiences, good one, astonishing one being fostered recently, especially on the environmental side, which is very active. I was the next frontier, by the way, for trade finance to go global and create new asset classes.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Having that hybrid ability to be able to utilize both the private, which would be Hyperledger, and then the public blockchains definitely makes a huge difference, especially when it comes to big enterprises that need some privacy, some security when it comes to what they're doing on a daily basis. Can you maybe briefly provide some examples of trade finance instruments that may have been already been tested on XDC or Hyperledger?
Look, open accounts, especially being experimented on Hyperledger. I was mentioning before We.Trade, but is that a real trade finance instrument? There are other experiences being fostered on other chains, by the way, recently, which are finding global success. And I'm mentioning Contour, which runs on R3 Coda protocols. But again, Harley, we have disruptive technology. So it's maybe time to look at these solutions being digitalized as really the past. How about going for new ways? I mean, I told you at the start, we have seen letters credits since 15th century. Maybe isn't it time to have instruments that are really less heavy on the operational side and more automatized, running automatically? Isn't it the case? Because look, if I digitalize the letter of credit, it goes smoothly and more swiftly. Good advantage, right? But hey, why cannot I have instruments that are less capital intensive? Because to have a letter of credit, even in digital form, open, I have to provide many guarantees. I have to prove that I have the funds. I see my funds being blocked in my own accounts for quite a lot of time. And for a small company, again, this is intense. This is heavy. You're cutting on my finances for a few months. So maybe tapping into alternative sources for finance is the right movement. So cool, I have used these old instruments, and there are plenty, by the way, on many chains being digitalized. Fine, I'm good with that. It's the traditional world. Let's create again a parallel offer that not only digitalize and make operations much swifter, but also access to the funding necessary easier. That's again the real deal. Fixing the trade finance gap we were talking formally.
1000%. Fixing that trade finance gap definitely levels the playing field and creates more of a regenerative finance aspect where people
Correct.
can and benefit from helping the environment and by hitting on the different ESG.
You hit definitely on the right button, Harley. Regenerate. We live in an age of sustainability, and sustainability is no longer a tag. Okay, it's definitely dramatically urgent need to achieve that. In any level, society level, business level, it's called development, right? It's needless to point out that UN made 17 sustainable development goals. And that's the case. And that's urgent. So to regenerate means also to create new sources. I actually, how you see that, by the way, I'm also partnering in crime into the BSCA, the so-called Blockchain Supply Chain Association, with my good friend Rick Valiquette from Montreal. 2 days ago, we had a wonderful meeting with Rebecca Harding from UK, and we were discussing this crossing point between trade, development, and ESG, environmental sustainability, environmental, social, and governance. That's the new frontier. That's the step ahead we have to take. No need to point out Basel. No need to do that, going too deeper. But we do have the necessity nowadays not only to have financial statement, we have to look deeper into what's being done by the companies and value on those aspects massively, furthermore. So you have to tap into emissions. You have to tap into, hey, how much plastic do I consume? Do I spread worldwide in my own operations? How much flows into the rivers from my own activity? Again, it's what we were mentioning at the start. Funds that come across with operational side, going much deeper into how things are being done. And we have, in doing so, we rethink our supply chains, we rethink our trade, the way we do it, because so far we're guilty. We weren't fair. We were not environmentally friendly. Let's do it because time's running up and it's massive. It's a massive shift towards totally different world that we have to do. And we have very little time to do that. So it's a large argument. It's a very wide one. So, but finding new ways to trade and supply chain finance is definitely the most urgent thing.
So what do you think are some of the massive roadblocks and obstacles that stand before us to get this massively adopted?
Look, Sean, the very first thing you notice when you look at trade is that it's bilateral, meaning that you have two countries, often three countries, because you have to have, maybe you have intermediary. I was talking to a lawyer from Hong Kong recently, and he told me, the problem with trade is that it's bilateral. And I said, cool, it is. And it is often multilateral because you have third parties into the picture often. I mean, you have different legislation, you have different frameworks, legal frameworks and regulatory ones, which makes it the picture definitely complicated. The main roadblocks is the adoption of a legal framework that enables what we were mentioning, electronic records instead of documents. Nowadays, you have the UN, Melissa, that allows for that. So the very first, let's say, element to be valued is definitely the model law on electronic transferable records to be adopted at global scale. And nowadays, you have very little countries that do that. You have Singapore, you have Abu Dhabi, you have Bahrain. You're gonna have probably UK very soon. It's already a lot. You have 50 plus countries that are covered by common law. Can you imagine the shift? So the first thing is, hey, finding the common ground for making operation go seamless and smoothly. It's complicated. We almost there. We all waiting for the approval of the electronic trade bill, electronic trade document bill. It is set to happen very soon. The community is eager to know more. We'll be eagerly awaiting good news from UK because that's the game changer. Together with a massive adoption of the model on electronic transferable records. So that's the first thing. You create a solid ground when different countries can start interacting seamlessly and digitally, removing paper. That's the first step we have to undergo through.
I
Okay.
agree.
Can you discuss some of the advantages of using the XDC network into tackling this and for the supply chain finance?
Well, the very first thing you notice when you have to deal with the XDC network, it's a hybrid, meaning you have double state. It's public, which is for trade. Once again, I tell you, a huge advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to keep certain data for you, you have the private state and a single chain. I don't want to make comparison, but if you go for other chains, which is entirely private, you have to use tools to let those private chains interact with the public ones.
Mm-hmm.
You just remove that stage. You go straight and you configure it like you want. I'm not a technician, of course. I cannot go deep down into details. I don't code. I'm not an IT architect. Second thing, the consensus allows you really to be green, not only in words. And I can tell you, besides these, the community, since my stepping in as one of the business developers, is focusing on green, sustainable solutions. And again, you want to go that and create something for trade, for supply chain. You have a chain that is, in its own nature, is highly sustainable. And it has a community working on projects aiming for sustainability, you have a much larger community, which is the ITFA one. So not only you have an inner community to cooperate with, you have a much larger family that has been working on trade and supply chain digitalization since the beginning. We're natively coming from the trade finance supply chain space. So we know how it works, we know the pain points, we connected through the bridges to the major international financial institutions in a single chain.
So,
Get nothing else to add to this, to be honest.
no, you definitely made some good points. They definitely have a lot of trade finance professionals, especially with the ITFA, like you mentioned, being involved. It's incredible what XDC's able to do. Looking ahead, what do you envision as a future impact of blockchain and DLTs on trade finance? Are there any emerging trends like AI or IoT that you see
Absolutely.
with trade finance?
Well, you said before me, Harley, you pointed out perfectly at what it's running in my head. The winning move for blockchain solution is definitely to collaborate with other technologies. You pointed out the main ones. You have a treasure trove of data through blockchain technology that can interact with machine learning solution, with artificial intelligence solution on the origination side of transactions, and not only IoTs. Look at how many data you can capture in a single trade transaction, supply chain transaction. The whole picture of international trade now is abstract and independence, based on independence principle, right? Meaning that you have two layers running parallels, what's been done and what's been declared, meaning that the financial side have very little contact with the reality. But nowadays, through IoTs, just for instance, you are able to tap into a series of data, and we do live in a data economy. You can leverage on those data at any stage. You can know the status of payment. You can know now, where is my stuff, what conditions my stuff is in. And related to this, at a former stage, I can detect a series of data, my own emissions, and my own energy consumption that I can leverage on to see my facilities being approved, to tap into new sources for liquidity. Again, let's fix the trade finance gap. So you not only have to think of that trade finance gap to be filled traditional way, think destructively rather, and think of the sources, new ones you can tap into to fix it. And you have the means. IoTs, artificial intelligence, are the perfect fit to collaborate with blockchain solutions.
Definitely. And what is your opinion on the role of decentralization as we progress into all these exciting trends and potential changes?
I'll bring my experience, John. For a company in Morocco, I was dealing with Africa massively in my own time, formerly. To have a transaction in place with Germany, with Italy, no matter what, they have to go through their own banking system, applying for funding. They have a single source for funding. Going decentralized, it allows a company in Morocco to tap into geographically now different sources. You totally decentralize. You expand your own horizons. Why shouldn't I be financed by someone that's in the UK rather than in Germany, rather than in Sweden, instead of my own house system? Why? What prevents me from doing that? So, to my view, going decentralized is going free. And again, this allows to unlock the value of being stock at the banking system nowadays.
Mhm.
The winning move we were mentioning. And decentralization is playing a key vital role into this. You'll notice soon when I will post the recording with my friend Mauricio from Brazil, who were discussing these topics in end of May, most probably. And saying we have the unique opportunity going decentralized to unlock the value nowadays being stuck at the central banking level. So I mean, you expand your own horizons. You're no longer geographically bound. You're free to see your own necessities being met.
You made some great points. The decentralization definitely destroys borders. It makes it a lot easier for these organizations or individuals to be players in trade finance. Do you have any advice for an individual and organization that wants to explore trade finance and blockchain innovations, how they could get started?
Uh, the very first step to undertake is education. Is knowledge. And we're also working into this, by the way, at multiple level. There is a series of new frameworks, new legal ones, new technical ones being put in place. Trade is not a simple stuff. It's a highly complicated one, needless to say. Think of the traditional world. You have many practices, you have many sets rules at international scale. It is really, really complicated. So the first thing is, on one side, realize, hey, the world is shifting. The world is progressing. I have to understand where it's heading to. So that's the very preliminary step to undertake. Second, DeFi, decentralization. You don't understand it overnight. So understand the basics, got the keys that can unlock the future to you. So again, and I'm casting a huge light, Harley, by the way, through my several ventures into this. Constantly, I'm having meeting, casting a light on what's going on, because I know that the time you invest now in education, in raising awareness, is the goal that I pick up in the future, that we all pick up in the future. And you have to start, my take on this, let's start from where the need is the highest. Large financial institutions, they do have their own bulk of knowledge. They have their own way of tapping into what's going on internationally. Let's start raising awareness from the smallest ones, from the companies, from those who nowadays are being left behind massively. So that's my take on this. Let's bring into the picture more and more companies that do trade. They do it with the help of banks or other financial institutions, but companies do trade. So the more you create a foundation for education, trade finance, to digitalization, to DeFi, the more the need for these tools will rise. And that's the shift that we need to have in place as quickly as possible. So get ready for more educational stuff in the future, Holly. I'll bore you most probably at the start. I know I'm quite boring, but that's what it takes. That's what we have to do.
Not at all. I would immerse myself in hours and hours of education. So any education you got, I'm definitely interested. So another point I wanted to kind of run by you is what is your thoughts on the power of tokenization and how that's going to change the world into the future, not only in trade finance, but in all other industries?
I don't know how to call it this in English, in America and US, the magic ball to foresee the future. But it's called La Sfera Magica in Italian. So now you heard this. It's my native tongue, guys. Uh, it's totally new world. That's tokenization is what we discussed earlier. It's freedom. You create new economies, you regenerate ones, you create micro economies. That's what's not being done nowadays. Uh, it's totally look. There has been many reports recently on the power of tokenization and security tokens, but definitely that's the right move ahead. That's one of the disadvantages, by the way, of working with Hyperledger. You don't have this tokenization part in the picture. So it's like creating something that missing an essential part. Tokenization in trade finance and supply chain, but farther than this, enables the creation of inclusive ecosystems. And I use the term ecosystem explicitly because in my own vision, this is quite different from a platform. You enable, through tokenization, the participation in a transparent way of all stakeholders into the ecosystem. Going back to the trade, everybody should be rewarded. Everybody should be automatically rewarded for the job being done. Both transporters, both carriers, both financiers, and this is what is enabled by tokenization. So, I mean, we're working on specific projects with XTC and XTC partners, let's call them so, to reframe this microeconomies. So the advice I gave you, stay tuned because we're going bigger and bigger. And we're going to come up with something really interesting.
Yeah, what I love about tokenization is it really frees up liquidity in assets that wouldn't usually be liquid. It makes them liquid. So it definitely, like you mentioned, it creates an inclusive environment and it can potentially close this billion-dollar trade finance gap.
Can you point out, can you imagine what a company could leverage from its emissions, from seeing, hey, from being transparent with what it's doing from its own emissions, both carbon, both plastic? Why a company shouldn't see itself being rewarded for eliminated plastic, dangerous chemicals from its own output? That's the key element we should look for in the future, Holly.
I agree completely.
What am I doing? How am I doing? And why shouldn't I leverage on my good practices, transparent ones? That's the reward I do need for being transparent and close to what's being really done, not going for greenwashing. We have the technology and we have now the legal framework for achieving this. I also say that sustainable development goals and blockchain are the ideal marriage because you have the incentivization given by the microeconomies in going transparent, fully transparent, really transparent. And that's the key role of tokenization at any level, whether it's security tokens, whether it's utility tokens, never mind. Unlock liquidity through alternative paradigms, through alternative asset classes. And tokenization can only do that. It's not a different instrument at present that can achieve that.
Yeah, I agree completely. And like you mentioned before, it's all about setting up the next generation for success. And I don't see a better way to do it rather than tokenizing these green digital assets and holding these organizations accountable for their emissions. And it just creates, like we mentioned before, regenerative finance, a better way of doing things that is actually sustainable.
And look, the need is over there. And people are constantly setting rise into this. As I said earlier, we had this wonderful discussion 2 days ago, and the discussion fell onto regenerative finance, refi, because it's there. When you see the word crypto, people often, oh my goodness, that's crypto, that's foggy. What is that? It's blockchain, it's Bitcoin. Oh my goodness, what is that? Escape from bad publicity. Escape from that. Skip from that. The values that crypto means encrypted, means security enhanced, the high level. It means the freedom of managing, the freedom of tapping into alternative sources. Again, and I stress this word, alternative sources. Only this. And yeah, I think we're close to massive shift,
I
which is indeed needed.
That massive shift is definitely on the horizon as we move past this speculative market with meme tokens and stuff of this nature that are clearly unsustainable. There's definitely going to be a need for utility projects that are actually making an impact on the world and changing industries like trade finance.
I don't look for speculation, Harley. I was in talks with colleagues of mine. I said, don't even come and ask me about speculation. I want the solution being created, especially in XTC network, to be rather impactful. No speculation, 100% impact, a sustainable one, an inclusive one. Because the more you include stakeholders being left apart, the more you let the ecosystem, the larger one, grow and scale. And with it, all the stakeholders being involved into this. That's the secret sauce. That's again why having a public infrastructure, a public blockchain infrastructure is nowadays essential. That's the way ahead. That's the way to look at this for the future.
Definitely the
Don't have to pay to step into the picture. You don't have to invest huge money to get into the picture. You have to access freely the public infrastructure.
Definitely that transparent aspect of the public blockchain ledger, especially one like XDC that's very flexible, definitely helps to be inclusive and include more people so that everybody has a chance to level the playing field. As we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or key takeaways you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, I think I shared actually during this conversation, Harley, but the thing that look, I tell you, the advice I give is to stick around, stay really tuned, because since my stepping into the world of XTC Foundation, I've always been keen on creating and fostering a highly inclusive environment, a sustainable one. And all projects I'm working on and I've been working on are all of them, or the most of them, into that space. So my goal now is to make XTC the absolute sustainable blockchain network, not only because of technical aspects, but because of the projects being fostered on the network. That is the way, because trade and development are so intimately entwined. So again, what we're discussing, no speculation, rather development, rather inclusion, good impact, a positive impact. So that's also my personal engagement.
Great. Yeah, where can listeners connect with you and find additional resources related to trade finance, blockchain innovations as well?
They can simply access my own LinkedIn profile and the profile of Blockchain Supply Chain Association, which is one of the ventures. And soon I will disclose more into what we're working for, so they can also access other other profiles where they can find loads of useful information. But mainly, you can go through my own profile, my own LinkedIn, and also Twitter profile, because the two being linked. So the posts you see on LinkedIn, usually you saw them on Twitter too. That's the easiest way for getting into touch with me. And of course, you can message me, you can reach out to me anytime you like. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, definitely make sure to go ahead and give a follow to or connect with Andrea on both Twitter as well as LinkedIn. And we're definitely super grateful to be have him here, and we definitely hope to connect with him again here in the near future.
Sure, it's my pleasure. Hopefully you connect with me again, with my colleagues, with the people I'm working on specific projects. So that's gonna be interesting. That's gonna be fun. Hope you will appreciate, guys.
Definitely. We're looking forward to XDC network growing, consulting businesses getting more utility, and great companies to come on it. So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Hopefully we'll give you good news in the near future, Sean, Holly. And thanks for, by the way, this insightful conversation. It's always nice to talk to you guys.
Of course, conversations like these definitely expand the brain and help people think in different ways of solutions that really can impact the world. So definitely need to continue to stay in touch. Thank you so much, Andrea.
You're most welcome. Grazie mille.
All right. Thank you so much. And yeah, everybody, feel free to reach out to us, reach out to Andrea, and explore further into the world of trade finance, blockchain innovations, and et cetera, because it is definitely taking over the world. And yeah, we're looking forward to the future. So thanks again. Thank you so much. We'll definitely catch up soon in the future. And you have a great weekend.
You too, guys. Enjoy your weekend and talk soon again.
Thank you.